I'm not really sure I could have Wes to be both Tony and Leo, or both. Since I didn't want Tobey Maguire's likeness as the character anymore at the time, I moved on with Wes even though I wanted Tobey for the final time, and that's it. But no, it's time to move on from the Tobster. At the time I made the original version of this video and such, superhero movies have evolved, where we now live in a world where we have these superhero movies that are part of an ongoing shared saga known as cinematic universes. By the time I started this channel and began my fan film reboot of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 5 years ago, superhero movies from 2012 and 2013, like The Dark Knight Rises, The Amazing Spider-Man, Iron Man 3, and The Avengers, all were out at the time, but as soon as Marvel's films in 2014, like Guardians of the Galaxy, came along, that's when I started to find my breaking combust into doing Power Rangers fan films like Marvel's movies of then and now, with what works and what doesn't. Back then, before Marvel's big boom of films we have now, we were living in an era of superhero and general Hollywood cinema when Christopher Nolan's Batman Dark Knight trilogy was more of a big deal. Since then, many passionate fans of comics and movies based on superheroes want to make superhero films where they have to be grounded, dark, and gritty, like Nolan's Batman, and as well as whatever Michael Bay pulled off with the Transformers, Zack Snyder with his many films including Watchmen and Man of Steel, Lionsgate with Twilight and Hunger Games, and so on, because those films set then new grounds and trends on what movies inspired by what to follow the trend of those money-making, cash-grabbing fads of film. I didn't want to do that with the Power Rangers. Sure, like I uttered under my breath about that Power/Ranger short in the last part, it was not going to happen with me. I'd rather keep Power Rangers the way it is when I made this film, since I'm a fan, and not go all, let's do a dark and badass fan film reboot of Lost Galaxy as opposed to the many fans of Mighty Morphin's wet dreams of a Hollywood-made Power Rangers film and the treatment of today's movie fads of rebooting things of old to be made new for the millennial crowd and not cater to those who are more nostalgic of the old stuff because of the time period the original was made because it had a better story and the better cast. Well, that finally came to a reality when Saban put his film reboot of Power Rangers out came last year when this video which this video predates again. At the same time I was doing what was supposed to be a dark reboot of Lost Galaxy in a fan film, there was of course that MMPR fan film that was announced and was being made the same time I was doing my Lost Galaxy film in the same style similar to what MMPR was going to be. Except, unlike MMPR, my Lost Galaxy fan film reboot is not a continuation of the original series. Instead, the slate is wiped clean to start a new continuity while paying nods and homages, some, that happened in the TV show to keep the nostalgia train for Power Ranger fans of the 90s by older fans like me a-rollin'. I know I've done a video response to the people behind that film, all because, well, my film is crap and MMPR looked much high quality and dark with real actors and it looked like Hollywood style film, whereas mine is puppets made of mount board and with use of old Power Ranger toys that aren't made anymore. I knew my film was going to bust on its ass hard. Therefore, the trolls that harassed me during the following of my film and hated it, wanted it to fail, won. That's fan base. Well, hey, that's fan bases for you. Anyway, I wanted to interpret the costumes to distance itself from the ones featured in the show and Sentai counterpart because I was suggested by a fan when I began this channel once to go with armored ranger suits and a helmet update, which I didn't do because, look at it. I think choosing Wes Bentley was the right casting choice for me to have him as the Red Ranger. But even though he could look like the character if I were to represent Leo, and if I went with the character name, the original character names from the show, and not what I came up with if this is a reboot. And if I did, then this would have been what Leo would have looked like years after his initial time as a Power Ranger was over in the show, but in the near but not too distant future. Makes sense to me than anyone watching this. In comparison is the puppet of the Red Galaxy Ranger that I had for a long time since 2011 at the time of this Redux in the original version of this video. I no longer have that model because in spite of all I've been through to try and make that Rise of Trakeena film and such, it is bygone. I did, however, but I had to throw it away. I crafted it for the late production of The Rise of Trakeena, which I did from months after I finished high school in 2011 up until the project's abandonment in July 2012, because whereas the design and puppet I was going for on this side here with the West Bentley face I was going to use for the reboot at the time was going to fit the vibe the film was originally supposed to go for, but I decided to go back to spandex clad Power Rangers, this time in the style of MCU territory. Yes, armor-suited superheroes are fine, but I think that seeing what I saw from various fan art deviations over the years throughout my time on the internet of if Power Rangers ever did at the time had a Hollywood reboot treatment, they would have to go with what we saw out of something from in The Dark Knight and Iron Man in terms of superhero costumes for modern cinema, and or something not superhero based but out of obscure Hollywood reboot films based on beloved nostalgic childhood properties already ruined by Hollywood, like G.I. Joe and its black armored suits from their very derided first film. Speaking of G.I. Joe, the chest piece to the rebooted Lost Galaxy designs I was going to use but abandoned later did reuse the armored chest parts of the Rise of Cobra G.I. Joe movie uniforms, but colored white rather than gray. Again, when I did the abandoned Rise of Trakeena fan film of mine, I was originally going for a G.I. Joe style Power Rangers Lost Galaxy film, but it's either here or there. For those who have visited my channel sometimes, well back then and even now, if you haven't seen my red and yellow Ranger stop motion test videos where I used toys from my old Lost Galaxy toy from the old Lost Galaxy toy line band I made that I had in my collection when I began this channel 5 years ago, please do so. It's one of two of the many videos that I began when I started this channel where I only did some stop motion with the toys or anything really. Speaking of animation techniques that I barely do with no effort, I originally planned on doing stop motion effects with the paper dolls for some shots when I was going to do the first film, because along with when I was trying to buy at the same time to buy the toys of the Lost Galaxy Zords off of eBay, because back then I was having money problems, and that's one of the reasons why my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film looked like crap to those that saw my original rough cut of it years back, and yeah, I know it sucked. And when I was doing videos and when I did videos like this, but I was like, screw that. See, that shows how lazy and belligerent I was even 5 years in 2013. Some troll I am, or was. I know I didn't do my best on those tests, even though I've never thought of doing stop motion before for these films, but I'll try as if I ever, eventually. On the Marshall character model, this was the last of the mount board I was using from a few years ago, and I think that's it from there. Like with the Rangers in the show, the weapons Tony would have as the Red Galaxy Ranger in the Marshverse would be the basic: Quasar Saber, Trans Dagger, Quasar Launcher, Lights of Orion Armor. When I did development and pre-production on the first film 5 years ago, I was going to have Tony obtain a Battleizer early in the series rather than later. If you have seen that video where I showcased that conquering armored Power Ranger figure of the Red Ranger from the old Lost Galaxy toys that I was going to use in this film, the first film, that video is still up on my channel as well. Just reduxing this for those who saw my older videos from 5 years ago, and for new viewers coming in to discover my channel for the first time, then you'll know what I've been trying to do passionately for so long with this, regardless of my endless bantering for the last 800 plus videos in 5 years in a row on this channel. At least that Battleizer figure from the Spring '99 wave of Lost Galaxy toys 19 years ago that I was going to use back then is still, in my opinion, way better than the Red Galaxy Rangers Battleizer he actually ended up getting in the actual TV show for the last few episodes. We all know the Red Galaxy Rangers Battleizer armor in the TV show was like pathetic, and we all knew his Battleizer armor on the show looked like recycled vacuum machine parts, overgrown toy claw notwithstanding, put together, and bam, some armored Battleizer form for the series. To me, that doesn't seem to be a Battleizer. It's not cool looking, it's ugly. And this is coming from someone who has been an obsessed Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fanboy for the last now 19 freaking years. Me. I used to have a toy of that Battleizer armored Red Galaxy Ranger once, by the way. Don't laugh at me because, you know, I said the Conquering Armor Red Ranger toy from the toy line was way better than the Red Ranger's armored mode of the Battleizer from the show, because it's just, to me, the Conquering Armor Battleizer is way better. I bought the last one long ago on Amazon as a collectible back in 2011 for only $8, and I was lucky. Hell, you can go on eBay for the same. Hell, you can go on eBay for the same toy of the same Conquering Armor Power Rangers from Lost Galaxy, especially the red ones. The collectible price is in vary. eBay. That's because I never had a Battleized Lost Galaxy Power Ranger in a long time, even though in my toy collection for the franchise now. Okay, now let's talk about his time as a Ranger in the fan film, since I really shouldn't really go on that any further on anything else. So apparently, now let's talk about something I tried to do with his character when I did the Rise of Trakeena. And like I said, in terms about AJ with his character, if you even call it a character for him, that when I did the Rise of Trakeena long ago, I originally wanted my Red Ranger along with my, you know, OC Gary Stu Yellow Ranger. You see, when I was doing the Rise of Trakeena, I wanted to go with the influence of what I saw of G.I. Joe, the Rise of Cobra, because again, Rise of Trakeena was supposed to be a fan film mashup of G.I. Joe, the Rise of Cobra, with Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and, well, with the characters that I have as the Rangers rather than Leo or whoever to take over the spots of, if I were to reimagine Leo and some other Lost Galaxy Ranger in the shoes of Duke and Ripcord from that movie when they came in and were inducted as, you know, Joes for them, and whatever, probably like Leo and Damon for if they were inducted to be Power Rangers in that way. There was some backstory about Tony that I established that would probably give Tony somewhat of a character for these films. And there was an original intent on having Tony to have, well, some parental figures or step-parental figures, as the character of Tony is pretty much a chosen one. Have him being connected to the other Rangers, pretty much like what was the original intention, what Troy's character was supposed to be from, you know, according from what I read off that Den of Geek article about what Megaforce was supposed to be with the characters and why the characters of Megaforce was lacking development. Tony was supposed to be some sort of a chosen one, having him being connected to the other Rangers where, you know, he would be inducted into the PRLG Underground, which was the original facility name I came up with, you know, a similar faction name of the Galactic Military Police Defenders. And he and AJ and the other, you know, he and AJ were new recruits of then at the time to be the Power Rangers, even though I was going for a more militaristic approach, trying to, again, going with the G.I. Joe approach of things with the characters, and, you know, like what I saw of that piece of crap Rise of Cobra movie back then. And I really wanted also to establish more to his character in terms of his relationship with a particular woman who would end up being assumedly Trakeena by name, which I did for, you know, Rise of Trakeena. Again, mashing up G.I. Joe with Power Rangers, take the two things together, and boom. But, you know, again, that's one of the reasons why my fan film didn't turn out the way I wanted it back then. That's why it ended up being, you know, that instead of being the Rise of Cobra of Power Ranger fan films, it became more like the Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego of Power Ranger films, because of particular someone's rejection of me and my fan film back then. So, but then as soon as when it came about Trakeena and her, you know, imprisonment at the Terra Venture Clinic Asylum, and then all this crazy stuff I did, you see, this is one of the, I guess there's one thing I need to take some points off about my, you know, OC character of a Red Ranger, that I kind of did do one of the biggest bad staples of bad fan fictions here as well, where I had Tony, who is an OC character, to have a relationship with a canon character like Trakeena, but the Trakeena I established for this continuity is, well, was going to be the same character as what we saw from the show, where Trakeena would ended up being like, oh god, I mean, what I did back then was a long time ago, but it's best to be skipped over and glance over and gloss over it, because it's a lot to be said there. I mean, this is just me ranting out of my ass and doing this unscripted here, because the rest is all unscripted. The stuff I said in the original video had to be scripted, because there were a lot of things that I said that dragged on and on and on, and some stuff that I said was very unsayable and incomprehensible, so that's why I had to cut that stuff out for the redux of this video. And then, of course, the relationship between Tony and AJ as friends, even though Tony was younger than AJ, according to what my original story pitch for the Rise of Trakeena was, when they, considering that this is the Marshverse and things are different than compared to the main continuity of Power Rangers. Whereas because, again, like I said, Leo and his team of Rangers are not present in this continuity. If they were, then I guess I should have went with, Tobey Maguire or Wes Bentley if they were to be Leo, and I would have been nobody, I would have been out of the story and have somebody, or I should have played the Green Galaxy Ranger for all I know, because, hey, I mean, no offense to about Reggie and Amy being married, them, Damon and Trakeena in the TV show that we all know. Hell, I should have been out of the story and just put somebody else in my stead as the Yellow Ranger, which I did later with Thorn in the 2014 film when we get to that eventually. And then it's something about, like, also akin to what we already had from Channing Tatum in G.I. Joe, the first one about the loss of, a fiance's brother that he lost in a convoy that ended up causing his his fiance's brother getting killed in action. Did the same thing where I kind of wanted to do something like out of G.I. Joe, where the Red Ranger would, I was also doing a looking for missing parents plotline that I did somehow was influenced way before and or after the Amazing Spider-Man came out. Because if you think back in the Amazing Spider-Man, and even its very inferior and over bloated sequel, Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker was looking for his parents, especially his father, Richard Parker, and they went missing after his parents dropped him off to his aunt and uncle's house. And then as soon as after that flashback, then it just fast forwards to his current life of him as a high school teenager. Though that's one of the reasons why nobody likes the Amazing Spider-Man. So basically, then we go fast forward to 2014 with the 2014 fan film reboot of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. And I gotta say, guys, looking back on my first fan film, the characters are sadly underdeveloped. I'll give you credit that my Red Ranger had the most amount of some development and interaction to the characters, but I just think what I was doing in terms of how I was writing the characters were just poorly handled. I wanted to do his story the same as Leo, because considering the fact that I decided to change the characters, change the name of the characters, because that's why I wanted to distance the characters from what we know from the Lost Galaxy series and the TV show of Power Rangers continuity, what I was doing for my fan films of Power Rangers, out of, in terms of it being a separate continuity. You see, what I was doing was something that also precursed to what should have become of that 2017 Power Rangers reboot. Instead of going with the names of the original Mighty Morphin characters of Jason, Kimberly, Billy, Trini, and Zach for the reboot with Dacre Montgomery in them, they should have came up with names of original characters that were, if they were new generation Mighty Morphin characters. That's basically what Power Rangers 2017 should have been. So what I did for my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2014 film, I went with character names that was not the same as Leo, Maya, Kendricks, Mike, Damon, and Kai. And hell, I would have liked to see if there was another blonde chick to represent Corone, aka the former Astronema. If this was, based on the original series continuity. Anyway, about Tony, he's an outcast. What led him to don the power of the Red Galaxy Ranger in his unprecedented ambition and consideration of his destiny, determining if he is worthy of being the Red Ranger and a leader? He was believed to be an only child of the Marshall family until he finds out that Jesse is his brother. Tony and Jesse's parents both died when they were young in an accident unknown of the two surviving brothers. Tony and Jesse are orphan brothers, but grew up years apart, living in different orphanage homes on Earth. By the time Tony got older, he had finished school, whatever type of school. I'm not going to say he was perfect in school, because I don't want to make him as an overpowered Gary Stu who was perfect at everything, but never went to college. On his expedition on the space colony of Terra Venture, Mark II, Tony reunited with Jesse, but Jesse wasn't happy to see his brother come on board to a rule that the ship's captain, Captain Chalmers, told him that no family relatives should come on board. Well, in the reversal of what Commander Senton said in Quasar Quest and Lost Galaxy with the whole never leave a team member behind. But I don't know why I wrote that. Tony disrespected that rule, but later on a mission regarding the Quasar Sabers caused Jesse to fall victim to a cracked sinkhole of the Earth thanks to courtesy of Villamax, unlike Furio in the TV show. Tony took on the power of the Red Ranger and the Quasar Saber, inherited by the Lion Galactus in honor of his brother's fall, and sought revenge against Villamax, who and his villainous self is responsible for Tony's brother's demise. Okay, along with the fact that he became a Red Ranger in his first film, even though the reason why I didn't want to do that origin stuff when I originally filmed the first movie 5 years ago, I just didn't want to fall into the pit of, originitis, which the Amazing Spider-Man and Man of Steel fell in. So that's why I had to skip the origin bit. For those who saw my rough cut of my first fan film 4 years ago, then you'll know why I skipped doing a reenactment of Quasar Quest and stuff, and that's why all those guys on Ranger Board and such talked all that shit. Relationship-wise, Tony is best friends with Brown Jones, Green Ranger of the Martiverse, and Miranda Campbell, Yellow Ranger of the Martiverse, and is in a love relationship with Gwen, Pink Ranger of the Martiverse. But when it came to Will, fellow Blue Ranger of the Martiverse, his friendship with him at first didn't go so well as thought, but when Tony encountered Will came off as a brass jerk and being self-pretentious, strict, and careless. However, in my upcoming fan film sequel, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Wrath of Trakeena, I decided to reduce my Blue Ranger from being the strict, disciplined, security guard asshole to the more of the big, comic relief of the group. Even though the Green Ranger was the comic relief, but I decided to make the Blue Ranger comic relief of my version of Lost Galaxy. Later on, Will, after being jealous of Tony's relationship with Gwen, started to open up to positive feelings with him and express how much of a jerk he was toward his soon-to-be future Red Ranger, Briar. Now, I know I wanted to establish a few things that the original series with Leo couldn't have done, because I would have liked it if, back in the original series with Leo and Kendricks, or Leo and Corone, or whatever, if there was a Red Ranger, Pink Ranger romance to happen. But sadly, we'll discuss more of that when I talk about the Pink Ranger next time. When proposed Lost Galaxy fan films prior to my 2014 film at the time upcoming by me were made, but were never completed between 2002 to 2012. Okay, I've said about Maguire, about my original fan casting, having the former Spider-Man, but, if he was a Power Ranger instead, but whatever. And, here's a few things that I need to bring up from my Morphin Gray case study. Tony and his character as a whole is based on myself, Anthony Marsh Jr., well, by name only, just named after me, basically. That's what I tried to say last time in the last part. But here are a few differences and comparisons between me and the character of Tony. In real life, I am African American, while my OC is actually Caucasian. So yeah, I kind of did that for some reason. It's like, moving on. In real life, I may not have no friends, but Tony in my Marshverse of Power Rangers does have friends, and they are formed into a team, and they do get along, somewhat. In real life, I rather live a private, isolated life, while in my Marshverse, Tony is an outgoing type of person seeking for adventure, much like his Power Rangers, seasoned character counterpart. In real life, I never had romantic relationships with any female at all. While in the Marshverse, once more, Tony has, in various series of the Marshverse of Power Rangers, has had relationships with those who are in his Ranger team, or even sometimes, in some instances, outside of it. Most concurrently, Gwen, which we'll discuss next time, but never those who are not a Ranger, and those who were upon to a villain. So there's that about Tony's character. He will return in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Wrath of Trakeena. This time, instead of him being a standard character with some bit of character development, since that's one of the reasons why the characters were sadly underdeveloped, that's one of the reasons why I need to, probably go beyond the limit with the character next time, when I release The Wrath of Trakeena. And probably give him more depth than he should, because when I did the first film 5 years ago and stuff, I knew this film was not working. I knew the things that I was doing was not working out. That's why I need to fix some mistakes that I've caused and what I've done, so that way the characters could actually be more relatable than just being a bunch of bland, F-bomb nobody characters, is what I'm saying. But I do think it really works for the best having a character like Tony. But hey, and I kept saying, and here I am 5 years later, and I think my character of Tony Marshall is better than Troy from Megaforce. The worst Red Ranger ever. And no offense, and at least unlike Troy and Mega shit, Tony at least expresses emotion and cares about his team, and also has some bit of backstory, but there should be more to delve in later installments. That's if I have the time to do so. Heck, when I do my next and last Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film of this series, I hope I do bring in full circle of his story arc in terms about his parents or about him being the chosen one. Since, you know, the Red Ranger in every Power Ranger season, with the exception of RPM, the Red Ranger is always the main character. So there is a reason why I would say maybe I should have just, once I complete this trilogy, maybe I should call these Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan films about my, you know, Red Ranger, call it the Tony Marshall trilogy or something. I mean, as opposed to like the Tommy Oliver show featuring the Power Rangers, but what can you do? So with that covered about the character of Tony, I think I can wrap up as much as I can within under an hour of time for the, you know, in terms of my Redux Morphin Grid case study for him. So I would say he was okay of a Red Ranger, but he's still, in my opinion, based on what I've heard from one of my fans when they saw my first rough cut of my first fan film, which I will re-release once April is up, that Tony is still a better Red Ranger than Troy. Enough said. In your face, Troy! Next time we discuss in our Morphin Grid case study archives for my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film series, we will discuss our, speaking of our Blue Ranger, our comic relief Blue Ranger. Even though he's not Asian, but roll with it. And that's why next time we are discussing my Marshverse Blue Ranger, Will James.